Perfect. Well, welcome everybody who's starting to join. Good afternoon. Hope you guys all had a good weekend. Thank you for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute here with Brian. Brian, how long have you been with Berkeley?
This is my 9th year on the faculty. When I was at PG&E before, I was one of the sponsors, the corporate sponsors. So that's really how I got to know the program, was helping to fund it. And then as a large financial sponsor, got involved in a bit of an advisory board capacity and got to know the founding director and how they did things. And sort of one thing led to another, and now here I am. So,
okay. Is this still something that's funded by PG&E or backed with PG&E?
I would love to have more PG&E money, but when they went through bankruptcy, that kind of threw that thing upside down. We were right in the middle of a large proposal to them, and
Okay.
they declared bankruptcy, and all bets were off for quite some time. So maybe in the future, but right now, I'm very grateful. They gave us significant money for a long time, and I have a lot of friends who still work there, so I know it's not a situation that anybody was looking forward to. But we'd love to have them back in the program. It's one of the more logical fits, not just because of the energy connection, but because so many of our students go on to work for PG&E, and so literally not just C2M and Haas, but UC Berkeley at large, with literally hundreds of graduates at PG&E. So really, really deep connections.
Really? Okay, interesting. But thank you for the background. So it is 3:01 now. So go ahead and get started. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Today we are joined by Brian Steele with Cleantech to Market from Berkeley. So Brian, if you could just give us a little bit of introduction on yourself and also Cleantech to Market, and then we can get started in learning a bit more about this application process.
I will do it. In fact, I'm going to jump right into a little screen sharing here. All right. So Cleantech to Market, as I was saying a couple minutes ago, is actually founded in 2008, which really makes it the first clean tech accelerator in the country. It predates ARPA-E and most other things that you've probably thought about in that sector. There are two of us who are actually the faculty, meaning we work with the student teams. Bill Shalander has really been with the program as long as I have, although in the beginning, he was at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab as the head of tech transfer there, and we worked closely with Bill because Lawrence Berkeley was a very close partner. And after he left, we lured him onto the faculty at C2M. Bill has a deep background in a number of key areas. He's got graduate degrees in chemical engineering and has spent time on the industrial side leveraging that technical knowledge, but then also spent a long time in venture. And most recently, he's been doing a lot of entrepreneurial things. He's actually involved with several very promising startups. So Bill brings some very relevant background to what we're doing. For my part, it's my 9th year directing the program. And I've done a variety of things in the clean tech and energy arena, some of them with the DOE and related organizations, others with more entrepreneurial endeavors, and was responsible for corporate strategy and development at PG&E, during which time we did a lot of tax equity funding for the solar sector. And I myself bring a range of backgrounds in terms of technology leadership. I spent 20 years before joining PG&E in Silicon Valley, and hopefully I'm able to bring some of that experience to bear with helping our teams and helping them help the entrepreneurs in turn get their companies going. So C2M, what is it, what we do? Fundamentally, what we're perhaps best at is helping entrepreneurs identify early stage target markets for their technology. Now, when we say clean tech, obviously clean tech is already a fairly large and somewhat amorphous definition of a wide variety of sectors. So we think about it starting with really the traditional foundation for clean tech, low carbon energy solutions, solar and wind and energy storage and so on. But to that, we've over the years added a bit of green chemistry and water technologies. There's obviously an inextricable link between what happens with water and the energy sector. So we have a fairly a lot of flexibility in terms of what we deal with, and both hard tech as well as software. So with respect to the innovators, it's a pretty good deal. The innovators, the entrepreneurs with whom we work, they get about 1,000 hours of work out of our teams. And that's completely free. Doesn't cost them anything other than about an hour a week during the 15-week program. So that's all we ask, is that they make themselves available to the teams, answering questions, sharing former research, just being there to be the primary point of contact. And depending on the size of the entrepreneurial team, it doesn't even have to be the CEO. It could be somebody who's equally knowledgeable, but maybe more accessible. So we're flexible there as well. But we do need to have what usually averages out to be about an hour a week over that period. And in exchange, a lot of interesting value is delivered. And I'm going to talk more about how that really works for different companies. So as I mentioned, we've been around, now it's our 13th year. In that time, we've served hundreds of innovators using these teams of graduate students, and I'll explain how that works. But the teams of graduate students also engage a wide array of subject matter expertise from across the country. So it's not just the graduate students that we're getting information from. So looking through the end of last year, we've now worked with nearly 90 projects. More than half of those have been commercialized. Some of them licensed to incumbents, the majority startups. And of those, the majority are still going concerns after 5 years and have raised substantial money, not to mention employing hundreds of people. Now, the farthest thing I'm doing is taking credit for this because there's so many organizations that are helping, including ones that people on the phone are familiar with, and as well as ARPA-E and many other organizations supported by the California Energy Commission. So we're just one stop in the journey, but we are still proud of what the companies we've assisted have managed to do, and like to think we've played a part in some of these successes. So we're here today to talk about the application process. I'll explain how that works, but just as a reminder, it is the applications close at the end of this weekend. If you need an extra day and you're really keen and you're having trouble pulling it together, give me a call, send me an email. I'm sure we can work something out. We're not looking to be difficult, but we do need to get on to the next phase of beginning to select the cohort. So there's a reason for this deadline. We work with a wide array of,
Brian?
yeah.
Just so you know, that right now I think we're all seeing like a wide view of the slide that's not zoomed on in any particular one.
You're not in slideshow mode?
No, right now I'm seeing like the layout of all of the slides, I think.
That's interesting. I just said resume share. Sharing is paused. And that's not where I'm going to stop the share and see if I can redo it. So you haven't seen any of those slides yet?
No, they were all in a wider view.
That's interesting. All right, well, let's see if we can fix that. All right, let me go back to Zoom. Thanks for mentioning that.
No, but I just want to make sure we
gotta love Zoom. Here we go. Let's try it again. Normally that works pretty seamlessly. All right, so you're seeing the slide sorter view now?
Yeah, right now I'm seeing it's like the tile mode of all 1 through 5.
All right, let's try this here. How about that?
Perfect.
All right, I'm going to go back and just flip through these. You've heard the words, but I'm just going to flip through these, if I may. So that's Bill Shalander and me. We talked about Bill's background in technology and finance and entrepreneurship. As I mentioned, I've done a variety of things in the energy sector as well as the technology sector. And this will be recorded, so you could go back and look at this. I apologize for not knowing that wasn't sharing. It looked great on my end, I'll assure you. So here's what we do, helping find early target markets, working with low carbon energy, green chemistry, and water technologies. And this is the 1,000 hours in exchange for an hour a week. And we've got a variety of testimonials from both channel partners as well as from the entrepreneurs themselves. And here's kind of what the last 12 years have looked like for us. And as I mentioned, we've worked with nearly 90 projects. The majority of those have been commercialized, and of those, the majority are still going concerns, raising a lot of money and employing hundreds of people. So I think that got us caught up to here, where I was saying the deadline is this Sunday. If that's problematic, by all means, let me know. We can work with you as best we can. And all this information is online. When I get out of this, I'll drop the link in the chat to make sure you have it. And this is where, thankfully, you stepped in and let me know we had an issue. So these are our entrepreneur support partners. These are organizations not unlike ours in some sense, in that they are primarily designed to help entrepreneurs bring promising innovations to market in various ways. And so we have learned over the years that it usually works best for us to speak with these organizations and to find out who in their portfolios might be at the right stage and the right type for us to assist them well. But it's not required. So if people want to come in outside independent of these, that's fine. But the majority of the companies we've worked with have a relationship with one or more of these partners. So for example, here was the cohort last year, 7 companies. We do 6 to 8, so it was 7 last year. And if you want to take a kind of a quick look to get a feeling for the diversity and the origins, you can look here at the type of companies. So hardware and software, things having to do with energy generation, things having to do with energy storage, food related, quite a wide array. And as I mentioned, these are the organizations with which they were affiliated when they applied. And you can get a feeling for the fact that majority of these are taking good advantage of the ecosystem that is available nationwide to help bring an entrepreneurial endeavor to market. The year before, we also had 7 that we let into the cohort. And likewise, these 7 represented quite a wide array of technologies. Again, primarily hard tech to some extent. A lot of these, of course, there's a combination of hardware and software, but I'd say probably over time, 85–90% of what we've done is more hard tech as opposed to pure software. And like this year, this past year, 19 and 2020, the 2019 cohort also came from primarily partners with whom we've had these long-term affiliations. So the 1,000 hours is spread over 15 weeks, as I mentioned, and there's really 4 phases to it. And in the first phase, the teams really dive deeply into the technology. This is where the science and engineering PhD students really are tremendously valuable, really as an interface between the team and the entrepreneurs, and perhaps the scientists on the entrepreneurial team. And to some extent, we ask the teams to be respectfully disrespectful of whatever the entrepreneurs may have done before, so that they can think very widely about what possibilities may exist, so they're not overly prejudiced by what the entrepreneurs may have done, because the entrepreneurs may have been, as they usually are, time and cash constrained. And here the team has the license to look at anything and everything. And once they've done that, they then begin to drill down using a variety of techniques and metrics to help converge on key markets in which the current price performance equation is most compelling. When they've identified those, usually it's between 2 and 4 markets they're going to spend time diving deeply, interviewing 50 people, looking at a variety of primary sources, doing a lot of techno-economic modeling to figure out what markets are going to make the most sense and why. And then in the 4th phase, as they pull this together, there's going to be, at the end of this, a symposium presentation. Historically, this has taken place on the Berkeley campus. Of course, this past year, it was Zoom like the rest of our lives, but it actually worked fairly well. It gave us a chance to have a more national audience. So that was nice to be able to incorporate people from across the country, and in fact, even some from other parts of the world. And then also the teams present to the entrepreneurs reports. These reports typically comprise about 100 pages, usually about 50 pages of primary content, and about another 50 pages of very detailed appendices. The appendices include techno-economic modeling outputs, interview notes, etc., as well as a number of things that are customized for whatever the technology may happen to be. Maybe it says other people that look like you at this stage were successful in getting SBIR funding or STTR funding, and here's what that looks like, and so on. So these reports are, as we say here, private for the innovators. We do also give copies of the reports to our key sponsors like the California Energy Commission, but the entrepreneurs have a chance to redact the report before it's distributed outside of the entrepreneurs organization, in case there's anything of an IP sensitive nature, for example. So in terms of how this works as an overall annual cycle, right now, of course, we're in the final stages of the application phase. We'll then go into the selection of the technologies, and usually those get selected by mid-March. And then we begin to start the team formation process, which really is completed by mid-May for the most part. In some cases, we often have 2 or 3 positions that it takes longer to go find the right student. And then those, once we have the teams in place, we turn our attention to the materials that we'll be using to help coach those teams to make sure they are updated and highly relevant to the technologies that have been admitted to the cohort. The 15 weeks happens from late August through late November, and then the symposium and market reports are delivered from early December to mid-December. And then we take the holidays off and start all over again. So that's the annual cycle. We will generally get between 40 and 50 applications. From those, we have a multi-stage process that narrows it down to 10 finalists. And from those finalists, we will pick, as I mentioned, between 6 and 8. And with those, build these teams of 4 to 6 graduate students. We start with the Haas students. These are second-year MBA students who bring with them a very diverse array of backgrounds into their MBA experience. And so already we may have MBA students with deep technology backgrounds, as well as finance and marketing and many things that one might associate with an MBA degree. It's a very diverse set of experiences that they offer. And then we supplement that with science engineering students, usually 3rd, 4th, 5th year PhD students, as well as students in the law school, the public policy school, and other schools as required, architecture and so on, depending on the technology. And that produces teams that I'd say average 5 to 6. Sometimes we'll do it with 4. It just really depends on what the project needs and what students we get and what skills they bring. And so these are simply great students. They are among the world's best. You can look at departments at UC Berkeley and see it's the #1 chemistry group in the world. So if you're a 4th year PhD student in chemistry, you really know your stuff. And so these are great people to work with, and we have so much fun every year doing that. Hopefully we'll be able to get back in person with them this year. As a result of all this, Berkeley Haas has also been cited as the #1 place to go for people interested in careers in clean tech, which means we have a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy now, because we're getting some of the best people who already have momentum in their clean tech careers, as well as those who are really passionate about switching into it. So it's a very passionate, knowledgeable group of students. And the university has recently doubled down on this and has just announced, literally, I think 2 weeks ago, a new graduate certificate in sustainable business. So for students who are thinking about becoming a chief sustainability officer or something of that nature, they can now add this layer to their MBA. And one of the required courses for this certificate is Clean Tech to Market. So there's a lot of integration with what's happening at the university. So, and I said I'll drop the URL into the chat session when I'm done, but that URL will take you to this page on our website, the 4 startups portion of our website. And on that page, we ask if you are interested in applying or curious about applying, start with the FAQs. They're quite extensive. Here's the URL here. You can jot that down if you wish. I'll drop it in a few minutes. And then when you click on any one of these accordion pieces, it'll expand and give you more information about that component. So lots of information there. And one of the first questions in the applications is, have you gone through the FAQs? The application looks like this, at least the first page. You have a chance to save your work and come back to it, so you don't have to do it all at one sitting. Entrepreneurs tell us it takes about an hour. I think that depends a lot on whether you have material that you can copy and paste or whether you're going to invent things for this. We ask that you try to keep it short. We're not looking for great tomes. You use what you've got already. And in terms of the pieces of this, this is the actual pieces. So the affiliations piece we've already talked about a little bit in terms of we're curious about who you may have worked with in the group of partners that we have experience with. We want to know, are you incorporated already? Have you created an LLC? Do you have relationships with other partners that you want to talk about? It might be a corporate partner that you're doing a trial for. And then what's the status of your funding? And then, of course, we want to know about the technology. And I'll talk a little bit more in a second about some of the other dimensions of that. Your thoughts about the risks of that technology, what's going to get in the way of bringing it to market. And then, very importantly, what's coming up over the next year. And that's super important because our number one objective is to make sure that we're a good fit for you. We want to make sure that, and in many cases, we'll say to an applicant, please come back next year. It looks like you'll be a much better fit next year. Because we do a few things really well. And so it's really important we catch you in the right part of your growth cycle. And if you're already working with ARPA-E or someone like that, you've already got milestones laid out. Do you have patents? Are they underway? We sign exhaustive NDAs with our entrepreneurs so we can get inside the tent and make sure we understand everything. And then from a TRL perspective, although we have worked essentially from the 2 to 8 range, I'd say in general, we tend to be a bit more in the 2 to 7, 3 to 7 range. And part of that is that we want to make sure there's data that our teams can work with. Likewise, we want to know your sense as to how long it will take to bring your technology to market and get paying customers. I'd say the majority of companies we work with are within a 3-year time frame on that, but we work with plenty of those that are a little farther out. And then, of course, why do you think that? What is it that makes you think that you're 24 months away from your first paying customers? Some of these application questions are really to help us understand where this fits in the clean tech arena, because we're also trying to understand business model potentials and what needs are out there in the marketplace that you might be able to solve that we're already familiar with. How do you relate to the marketplace and others who may be planning or already out there with comparable or competitive solutions? Are there barriers you expect to bring things to market? And then, of course, like a lot of early stage technologies, you probably have already thought about, we certainly spend a lot of time thinking about what does it take to scale this? Something that may work really well in a test tube may work differently in a liter scale bottle, may work differently in a large commercial vat. Want to understand the thinking about that. Quite often people have received feedback from mentors, investors, partners, and we'd love to hear what others have told you. Not uncommon to have pivoted. I'd say certainly in my career, most of the startups I've ever worked with have pivoted at least once, and it's always useful to know, did you start thinking about something else and change? And then this we come back to a lot. Why are you interested in C2M? Because sometimes there are very legitimate needs like, wow, we're doing really great. We want to go to Sand Hill Road and raise a bunch of money. We'd love to have your students help create a great pitch deck. And so I can understand that need, but that's actually not what we do and do well. And I can direct you to students who can do that, but that's not what we do. So it really helps to calibrate what we can do best for you with what your expected objectives are. Questions, of course. And then most people already have some sort of description that they've used for investors or partners or other purposes, giving you 3 pages to upload to explain that. We'd like 1 PowerPoint slide. We use these to help us with the students because it's a really easy way to explain what's going on in one page. And then a 90-second video can be very casual. Most people, it's an iPhone in a kind of selfie format, basically just saying, this is what we're doing and why we're passionate about it, and so on. Now, some companies already had some pretty slick videos last year prepared. Other people, it was just, somebody's partner holding an iPhone. In fact, we had one group last year, it was kind of cool. They had both partners walking down the sidewalk and somebody was following them, taping the conversation. And it was kind of a cool vantage point. It was had a very authentic feel to it, talking about why they were excited about what they were doing. So that is what you will find when you go on the application. And I'm now going to stop sharing and we can talk about questions. And again, I'm sorry about the glitch there with the slides. I'll have to be more mindful of that next time. And
Perfect.
I'm going to drop, since I said I would, I'll drop that into the chat. There we go. Oh, somebody already did. There you go. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, Brian, thank you so much for sharing some information with us. The first question we have is, are the slides going to be available? Is there a way we can make the slides available after?
Sure. What would be easiest for people?
If you just send them to me, I can get them out to everybody who's interested.
Okay, great. We'll do that.
So perfect. So Gary, yes, I will get you those slides. But does anybody else have any questions? And then if you want to raise your hand or just chat it in, I can also give you permission to talk and we can actually have a conversation about it. So if anybody has any questions, we'd love to hear them. But I actually have one. So we did talk about the TRL and you said it's mainly 2 through 7. And you know, since it's Cleantech to market, I kind of have an idea for the question, but is there anything specific in Cleantech that you're looking for? A lot of the companies we work with are agriculture based, but they also have, you know, Cleantech solutions. So is there any kind of limitations in the Cleantech space?
No, it's not. Period. It's not. We loved having a company Trophic in this last year. They had a seaweed based food technology, and so it was great. And clearly, there's so much momentum being gained in the food, energy, water nexus that we'd love to do more with that. You know, I think we're trying to find this somewhat amorphous link between technologies that are going to make a difference if they're successful, and our belief that they have a potential to be successful. So we have a little bit of a VC-like approach there. Like, if I were to invest, do we think this could become something that was viable, and so on. Although I will say, contrary to a VC, we're just as happy if an incumbent company wants to license the technology, if that's what the entrepreneur wants to do. Whereas there's this tremendous gravitational pull in the Bay Area towards creating startups. Our mission is to bring things to market. We want to bring solutions to market. And sometimes the best way to bring something to market is to have a team which are working with an incumbent. Now, maybe that leads to a broader licensing business, or maybe our team recommends that the IP gets carved up into different fields of use, and that for some applications it gets licensed, and then the startup focuses on others, but that licensing revenue brings non-dilutive funding to the startup, and that can be very helpful. So it really just depends, but we're by no means startup focused, and it's not like a business plan competition where the students get better grades because they figured out how to make a truly successful startup versus one that was going to license the technology. We're trying to help. We're going to run alongside. It's kind of like a relay race where the entrepreneur is already going at sprint speed, and we're going to run alongside and catch up and do the best we can to help for 15 weeks. And that may be doing all kinds of things. In some cases, we had this one technology probably 5 years ago from Caltech, and it was this very esoteric math algorithm for allocating electrical distributions in a smart grid environment. I didn't understand a thing about it, and we wouldn't have probably brought it in if the folks at PG&E didn't say, we love that. If that works, that's gold for us. And we said, that's good enough for us. You're a big sponsor. Let's give it a whirl. It took us all summer to find a PhD student with the mathematics abilities to help be kind of a guide for us in this, but we did. And although I think I barely understood it even by the end of the 15 weeks, what happened that was nearly magical is that the entrepreneur said, oh my goodness, for the first time ever, and I've been working on this for a decade, I can now explain to my wife and my neighbors what it is I'm doing and why it matters. You've managed to put it into English, and you put it into pictures. And now I feel like you go out and raise money, and he did. He went out and raised money, leveraging a lot of this, the insight. So the insight was not, wow, you've got to be in this market, because there was only one market for it. It was the utility sector for managing smart grid distribution. But the magic was in their ability to explain and position it in a compelling way. And so that was kind of fun. So we never really know what the teams are going to come up with. Sometimes it's a complete pivot. Sometimes it's an enhancement. Sometimes it's an affirmation of something, but with now a lot more data that the entrepreneur can use to raise money or get another grant.
What are some of the common things that people end up getting out of the end of this? So I know all of the technologies are very broad, very different, but what are some of the common things that they all take away?
I'm sorry, they being who in this instance?
All of the different companies that you work with. So you work
The company?
for technologies. What's something that all of the companies seem to take away at the end?
I think because of the diversity of the technologies and their potential and what they need, there actually are relatively few truly common denominators. I would say perhaps one of the common ones, and this is something that comes up every year, is an entrepreneur will say, it was so cool to watch somebody else who became extremely knowledgeable pitch my stuff. I never saw anybody else pitch my stuff before, and I saw it from a whole different angle. It's sort of like if you saw yourself in the mirror for the first time, it'd be a bit of an awakening moment. Well, at least for me, maybe not for you. But and so I think for the entrepreneurs, they see things they never saw before about it. Like, wow, that was so powerful, or oh, I'm not sure about that. And so it creates this lens, but it's not just seeing somebody else present the stuff that they built. This is somebody who independently became very knowledgeable about the sector and their technology and potential applications and potential partners and customers and distributions, et cetera, right? As well as the economics. And then you get to stand back and you watch all that. And I think that is a bit of a magical moment. At least that's what the entrepreneurs tell me. I'd say that's probably the best answer to the question, because the rest of it becomes more individualized as to what stage they're in and what they need and what the market implies and so on.
Okay, great. And then we do have one question coming in from the comments. So if a company is actually commercializing their service and they want to change the focus to a more clean and carbon neutral business, would the program still be able to help with this?
And I see that also the follow-up question there about equity. So
Yeah.
Let me answer the second one first. No, there's no equity, there's no cash. The only thing that we require is this hour a week. We had one team last year and they waited the better part of a month to get data they'd been promised in day one. And when you're only working on something for 3.5 months and you wait a month to get the data, it's brutal. And so that's really what we require is we need, and we've something we vet for actively. Is this entrepreneur, does this person have the time, the inclination, the personality, the energy to be accessible and to engage in the right kind of way? So that's what we take. In response to the first question, the answer is yeah. One of the very first startups, when we started years ago, literally 2008, we were working exclusively with researchers at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And kind of by definition, everything was mostly still on the whiteboard. I mean, a bench scale prototype was still years away. And so there were no startups. And half of these researchers didn't even want to become an entrepreneur. It's a very different kind of environment. And perhaps one of the first true startups we ever worked with was funded by a very well-known venture capital firm. And they came to us and said, this startup's just not working out. We're not getting the momentum we need. And they all had an office and they had 20 people in this office. And they came to us and said, what would you do with this? And our team came up with something completely different than where they were focused. And so I think that that's an analogy for things that we can do. And so there is that kind of respectfully disrespectful guidance that we give the team really opens up the opportunity for pivots. Where things get a little trickier, and this may be another partial answer to the question, is it gets harder when an entrepreneur says, okay, we have this great business and I don't want you to worry about our business and we got that covered, don't worry about that. We want you to figure out whether this market would be a good market to go into. That becomes a little more of a consulting engagement, and we would probably tend to shy away from that. There are teams, Berkeley has a wonderful program called Berkeley Innovative Solutions, that pairs up teams of business school and other students to help with questions just like that. So we would probably introduce them to that group. So we do tend to look for warning signs that an entrepreneur is really trying to steer us into more of a more narrowly defined consulting engagement. Stay away from those.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see, are there any other questions? If you want to just chat them in or raise your hand, we'll definitely call on you. Last chance. All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for jumping on and giving us this information. I definitely found it very helpful. I think it sounds like a great program, and I hope that you guys get a record number of applications this year. But this webinar will be recorded and we will have it on our website. So if you or anybody you know you think you could benefit, please make sure to share it with them. And then Brian, if you want to send me those slides, I will also make sure to share those with everybody as well.
I will. Great. Thank you for your help. I appreciate everybody's time today and look forward to anybody follow up with me directly, questions, however I can help. Okay.
Is there any email that you wanted to throw into the chat so that people can...
I'm doing it right now. And even as a bonus for watching this fine program this evening, that's my mobile number. So call me or text.
All right. Well, that mobile number is going to be a live webinar exclusive. So make sure you guys write that down and then have that information. So if you do need anything, also feel free to reach out to the Wet Center. We're happy to help as well. And Brian, thank you so much.
I will say, if you are planning to call, probably best to text ahead of time. I get enough spam that I may not pick up if it's a phone number I don't recognize. So if you text me first and say, hey, it's so-and-so from such and such, I'm going to give you a call, or that's probably the best way to get through.
Just in case they're calling about your car warranty information one more time.
Oh man, I got a lot of those recently. Is that a new thing? I get one a day at least.
Oh, I got 3 a day from the same number, so I feel your pain.
Oh my goodness, it's nuts. All right, thanks everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and have a great day. Thank you, Brian.
Bye.